Be prepared. If life has been pulling you away from people lately, don't panic. That's the sign something massive is lining up for you. The last 3 days of November are not ordinary days, and most people have no idea what this window actually holds. Something extraordinary is about to happen, and if you're spiritually attuned, even slightly, this is the moment you must stay aware. There's a reason why you must isolate during this time, because here's the truth. These next 72 hours will reveal who's stepping into their next chapter and who's not. Before every major shift in your life, you'll notice the same pattern. You start pulling away without meaning to, not because you're tired, not because you're antisocial, but because your spirit knows something is forming inside you that people around you can't touch. These last 3 days of November magnify that instinct. They make you feel the pull inward, not as loneliness, but as preparation, a kind of spiritual incubation where everything you'll need for December is quietly rearranging itself behind the scenes. This isolation isn't emptiness. It's the universe clearing the room, because something big is about to enter. And anyone who doesn't understand this phase risks stepping into December unprepared, stretched thin, and out of alignment with what's waiting for them. During these final days of November, your intuition becomes stronger than it's been all year. Not because of dramatic spiritual symptoms or cliché signs, but because the internal signal is getting louder while external noise becomes weaker. The world is winding down, people are distracted, the month is closing, and for the first time in weeks, your inner voice isn't competing with constant stimulation. Isolation acts like stepping into a quiet room after being surrounded by chatter. Suddenly, things that felt confusing begin to make sense. Thoughts become clearer. Small nudges you ignored earlier in the month start revealing what they were actually pointing to. It's not that your intuition is awakening, it's that the interference is fading. Your intuition has been whispering for weeks. These 3 days are when you finally hear it clearly. This is why being alone right now feels different than it did earlier in the month. It's not emptiness, it's tuning in. It's the feeling of finally catching the signal that's been trying to reach you all November. And once you begin hearing it, the direction it points you toward is something most people won't recognize until it's too late. As November reaches its final stretch, the collective energy begins to twist in a very predictable way. People start rushing emotionally, energetically, and mentally, almost as if they suddenly realize the year is slipping out of their hands. They begin running through their lives in fast forward, checking what they accomplished, worrying about what they didn't, replaying conversations, analyzing relationships, counting mistakes, forcing productivity, or trying to squeeze meaning out of the last few days. And this creates a kind of emotional stampede, an energy of pressure, a tension that spreads through the air without a single word being spoken. You can feel it in people's voices. You can sense it in their body language. You can see it in the way they text, respond, react, withdraw, or lash out. The collective frequency becomes tight, jittery, unsettled. Everyone feels like they're running out of time. But for some reason, during these final 3 days, you don't get pulled into any of that. Instead of spiraling with them, you start stepping backward, not physically, but energetically. You begin feeling detached from their worries, untouched by their urgency, almost like you're watching their panic from behind a glass wall. And that's the beauty of isolation right now. It grants you immunity. While everyone else is trying to solve the entire year in 72 hours, you drift into a completely different state. One where you're not absorbing anyone's stress, anyone's projections, or anyone's frantic emotional noise. You're not being dragged into their regrets, or their rushed attempts at forced clarity. What isolation does in this window is protect your internal atmosphere. You're no longer breathing in the emotional toxins of the people around you. You're not reacting to their emotional outbursts. You're not getting swept into their final minute crises. Without even trying, you rise above it, simply because you're not participating in their emotional chaos. And you start noticing something interesting. The more still you become, the more chaotic everyone else seems. You can see people making impulsive decisions, panicking over nothing, picking unnecessary fights, taking things personally, forcing conversations, clinging to the past, or trying to find meaning in places where there isn't any. November is always the month that delivers the heaviest lessons, but the truth is that those lessons don't actually make sense until December begins. There's something about these final days, the 28th, 29th, and 30th, that creates a pocket of clarity where everything you lived through this year finally starts lining up. People think they isolate because they're tired or overwhelmed. But what's really happening is that your spirit is creating distance so you can interpret what November has been trying to teach you. This is the moment where confusion turns into insight, where scattered experiences finally connect, and where you start to understand why certain things had to end and why certain paths pulled you so strongly. These last days aren't about shutting the world out, they're about letting meaning settle in without interruption. November teaches, but December explains. When you step away from people, even briefly, you give those explanations room to rise to the surface. This is why isolation feels natural right now. It isn't retreat, it's alignment. It's your inner world trying to catch up with everything your outer world has already lived. These final 3 days of November don't unfold randomly. They operate like a sequence, a quiet, subtle progression of 3 inner phases that build on each other. Not in a mystical or dramatic way, but in a deeply psychological and energetic way that most people don't even notice because they're too busy reacting to their environments. But once you isolate, once your energy becomes your own again, you start to feel the shift happening inside you. The first phase comes with a strange tension, a kind of internal alertness that isn't negative, but definitely noticeable. It's the feeling you get when your system is preparing itself for something, not danger, but realignment. You may not even be able to explain it. You just feel more aware, more introspective, more conscious of what's happening inside you. It's like your mind is reorganizing itself, sorting through the pieces of the month, making space for clarity that isn't here yet, but is on the way. The energy is a bit tight, but in a productive way, almost like your spirit is bracing for a shift. Then comes the second phase, where the internal tension softens. You start to feel an emotional loosening, not sadness, more like relief. Emotional reactions that used to feel heavy suddenly feel lighter. You respond less. You interpret less. You take fewer things personally. You stop replaying certain moments. The emotional static that's been lingering since the beginning of the month quietly begins dissolving, not through confrontation, but through release. This is the phase that protects you from making emotional, reactive decisions. It clears the emotional fog so you don't carry old feelings into the next chapter. Then, without effort, the third phase begins. It's quieter, much quieter. This is the moment where something inside you feels open, spacious, ready. Your thoughts become cleaner. Your intuition feels closer. There's a sense of internal stillness you haven't had all month. And it's in this quiet where real clarity appears. The kind of clarity that doesn't come from thinking, but from alignment. Suddenly, you understand what you want. You understand what you're done with. You understand what December needs from you. This final phase isn't about doing. It's about receiving. It's the moment where your mind, heart, and energy finally line up long enough for the truth to come through. Not dramatic truth, grounded truth. Direction, insight, confidence, calm. Preparation opens the door, release clears the room, and receiving fills it with what you were meant to find. This three-phase sequence is why isolation is so powerful right now. These days aren't meant to be loud. They're meant to unfold quietly, internally, in a flow that only makes sense once you step back and let it happen. And as the third phase settles in, you'll notice your energy pointing you toward the one thing that decides how you walk into December. And that shift is what comes next. One of the most misunderstood parts of these final days of November is how private they're meant to feel. When insight hits you during this window, it doesn't come in its final polished form. It doesn't arrive as something you can showcase, explain, or brag about. It shows up raw, delicate, and unshaped, like a seed that hasn't even cracked open yet. And that's exactly why these insights feel so personal. They're not meant to be spoken about right away. They're meant to settle inside you first. When you talk about an insight too early, you pull it out of its natural environment. The moment you share it, the moment you try to find the perfect words to describe it, something shifts. The insight stops developing organically and starts reshaping itself based on how it sounds out loud or how other people react to it. Even a simple comment like, "Are you sure?" or "That doesn't make sense," is enough to distort what was forming so clearly inside you just moments before. This is why, during these last 3 days, isolation isn't just a preference, it's a form of energetic protection. It shields your insight from becoming a group project. It keeps your breakthroughs immune to noise, opinions, interpretations, and emotional interference that can easily dilute something that was meant to be pure. Most people don't realize that early-stage realizations are incredibly sensitive. They need quiet. They need internal space. They need your attention, not an audience. It's like planting a seed and then immediately digging it up again just to check if anything has sprouted yet. You interrupt the growth by exposing it too soon. Some truths only stay powerful when they stay inside you long enough to grow roots. Keeping these insights private isn't secrecy, it's stewardship. It's you recognizing that something sacred is happening within you and choosing to guard it until it becomes strong enough to stand on its own. You're not hiding from the world. You're giving your inner world a chance to fully build itself before anyone else gets a glimpse. And what's interesting is that when you do hold your insights inside, when you let them mature in silence, they transform into something far more stable. Instead of being ideas you're trying to convince others of, they become truths that reshape the way you move, the way you think, the way you choose. But once you enter this space of internal clarity, something else tends to surface, something almost every awakened person experiences during energetic transitions like this, and it's often misunderstood until you know what it really means. During these closing days of November, you might notice that certain thoughts start circling back to you over and over again, not in a stressful way, not in a panicked way, but in a quiet, persistent loop. It could be a memory from earlier this year, a choice you made months ago, a conversation that ended strangely, an idea you pushed aside, or even a feeling you thought you had already outgrown. These recurring thoughts aren't random. They're not your mind overthinking, and they're definitely not a sign that you're slipping backward. They're signs of energetic reintegration, your system bringing forward the exact thoughts that are ready to be rewritten. Thoughts repeat when they're at the doorway of transformation. They loop because they're shifting frequency. They resurface because your inner world is finally prepared to see them in their true form, not in the distorted way you experienced them the first time. This process becomes incredibly active in the last 3 days of November because the mind is quieter, the emotions are softer, and the intuition is clearer. With fewer distractions, you finally have enough inner stillness to revisit these thoughts from a higher level of awareness. What once felt unfinished now feels ready to be redefined. Your mind repeats what your soul is ready to transform. This is why these thoughts return, not to bother you, but to introduce a new chapter of understanding. They show up again because the version of you standing here today is far more capable of handling their truth than the version of you who lived them originally. The thought hasn't changed, you have. And once you realize this, the looping stops feeling random. It becomes directional. It becomes a signal that you're on the threshold of a deeper integration, the kind that shapes how you step into December. These recurring thoughts act like messengers. They're reminding you that you're releasing old interpretations, rewriting old stories, and clearing out the mental clutter that didn't belong to you anymore. They have one job: to make sure your mind and soul walk into December on the same frequency. And when this reintegration completes, you'll notice a powerful shift, the kind that changes not just how you think, but how you move through the world in the days that follow. Something that becomes extremely noticeable during the last 3 days of November is how your environment starts to rearrange itself without you doing anything. People step back, conversations feel off, plans dissolve, and entire connections suddenly feel like they lost their signal. And while most people immediately assume something went wrong, what's actually happening is a highly intentional clearing. This is the universe removing distractions that would block you from stepping into December with the clarity you need. You may notice that the people who usually message you go quiet, or the ones who keep you emotionally busy feel strangely distant. Even social interactions that normally flow effortlessly can suddenly feel forced, heavy, or strangely meaningless. It's not because you're disconnecting from them, it's because your energy is being pulled inward, so you don't get influenced by noise you were previously too close to notice. The closer you get to this transition window, the more the universe filters your environment. Anything that isn't aligned with the next version of you gets temporarily muted. This is why isolation becomes the natural state during these days. You're not meant to be involved in conversations that pull you into old roles, old patterns, or old narratives. You're not supposed to be caught up in the chaos of other people's end-of-year anxieties or stress spikes. These final days create a buffer between you and the noise, a buffer you didn't ask for, but desperately need. It's like a protective gate that closes behind you so you can move forward without turning back. The beauty of this purge is that it gives you room to breathe without interference. It removes the subtle distractions that shape your mood, influence your thoughts, or distort your intuition. Connections that were draining you, even in small ways, naturally fade because their frequency can't match yours at this moment. You're not losing people, you're being put in a position to hear yourself. Isolation isn't avoidance, it's stepping into the clearing the universe created for you. This clearing is where your direction sharpens, your thoughts settle, and your field resets. It's the space where you get to observe everything without pressure, without comparison, and without the emotional turbulence of others pulling on your energy. By the time this distraction purge settles, something else begins, something even more transformative than simply removing noise. The universe starts illuminating the truth you couldn't access while you were still surrounded by the wrong frequencies. And that's where the next phase begins. What happens after the distractions fall away is far more important than the purge itself. The final days of November initiate a kind of hidden energetic audit, a quiet, internal evaluation that shows you what's genuinely aligned with you and what has been subtly draining you all along. This audit doesn't judge you and it doesn't punish you. It simply reveals. It shows you everything you've been tolerating, everything you've been outgrowing, and everything that's been shaping your reality from the background. You might notice you have less patience for certain people, not out of irritation, but because your awareness is heightened. You can feel the difference between someone who supports your energy and someone who quietly weighs it down. Habits you usually slip into without thinking suddenly feel heavy or misaligned. Even environments that once felt comfortable may begin to feel energetically cluttered, as if they're filled with remnants of an older version of you. This shift is subtle, but it's powerful, and you only notice it because you're finally quiet enough to see it clearly. Isolation is what activates this audit. When the noise of other people fades, your intuition begins to highlight things you missed. You start seeing who drains you and who energizes you, which decisions lead you forward and which ones pull you backward, where your peace expands and where it collapses. And the more you pay attention, the more the truth becomes impossible to ignore. This is the most honest window of the entire year. These 3 days show you what has been shaping your emotional landscape without your permission. They reveal the habits that weaken your confidence, the connections that exhaust your spirit, the responsibilities that no longer match your growth, and the paths that still feel alive inside you, even if you forgot about them months ago. This internal audit isn't there to overwhelm you, it's there to align you. It prepares you to enter December with a level of clarity you couldn't have achieved while surrounded by the noise of everyday life. It gives you the ability to make decisions from truth rather than from habit. It lets you feel, without distortion, what direction your life wants to move toward next. These 3 days expose the truth you couldn't see all month. And once you see it, the entire way you approach December changes. Instead of stumbling into the new month with leftover confusion, you walk into it consciously, knowing what to release, what to protect, what to build, and what to follow. This is the purpose of the audit, to put you back into alignment with who you're becoming, not who you've been. During these final days of November, something unusual starts happening in the background of your mind. A kind of quiet echo that feels like a memory but doesn't belong to anything you've lived through. You might find yourself pausing for a moment, wondering why a simple scene feels strangely familiar. A sentence someone says, the way the light hits the room, a thought that returns with the weight of recognition. This wave of déjà vu isn't random. It's one of the most subtle indicators that your inner world and your future path are beginning to sync. Most people misunderstand déjà vu as a trick of the mind. But during these last 3 days of November, it works differently. Instead of pointing backward, it points forward. It's your system picking up on subtle alignments, moments where your internal frequency matches the direction you're meant to move toward next. These days heighten that sensitivity because everything around you is slowing down just enough for your intuition to get ahead of your logic. What you're feeling is the energetic version of stepping into a scene your spirit already prepared you for earlier in the year. It's almost like the universe nudging you with quiet confirmation. You're getting close. Déjà vu appears when your actions, emotions, and decisions finally line up with the path that's been waiting for you. That's why it hits you in moments that aren't dramatic at all, brushing your teeth, looking at your phone, walking through a doorway. Those mundane moments are where alignment becomes the most noticeable. These final days create the perfect environment for this phenomenon because you're not overstimulated, distracted, or overwhelmed. The silence makes you sensitive enough to notice what your intuition has been trying to show you all month. It's the difference between feeling lost and realizing you've been walking a path that's been forming under your feet long before you recognized it. And the truth is, déjà vu during these days isn't a warning, it's reassurance. It's the universe showing you glimpses of a timeline you're about to merge with. You're not remembering the past, you're remembering your potential. Déjà vu isn't the past repeating, it's your future calling. These next days will make those moments more frequent, more vivid, and more meaningful. They're shaping the version of you. December is going to bring forward the version that's aligned, aware, and ready for the breakthrough that's been building in the background for months. And once you understand what déjà vu is signaling right now, you also understand that this transition isn't just internal, it's preparing you for a completely different level of visibility. What these last days of November are really doing, beneath every intuitive nudge, every moment of isolation, every cycle of release, is preparing you for a version of yourself that will be nearly impossible to overlook in December. The silence you're stepping into isn't an ending. It's the preparation for a beginning that will make you feel more alive, more confident, and more aligned than you've been all year. This phase of isolation isn't meant to protect you from the world. It's meant to prepare you for the moment when the world will finally match your new frequency. Isolation isn't about protection, it's about preparing for exposure. And not just any exposure, your exposure. December has a way of highlighting people who spent November doing the inner work quietly while everyone else was rushing, panicking, or distracting themselves. That's why this window feels so different. You're being positioned, not hidden. When December arrives, you'll notice a shift not just in how you feel, but in how others respond to you. You may become more magnetic without trying. You might attract opportunities that seem to appear out of nowhere. You may find yourself speaking, acting, or deciding with a clarity that makes people look twice. December amplifies the energy you walk into it with, and these last days are sculpting that energy with precision. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about becoming the version of yourself you've been slowly aligning with for months. You might look back at the beginning of the year and realize how much of your old life no longer fits, how many old habits quietly dissolved, how many old attachments stopped feeling like home. December magnifies those shifts and turns them into momentum. You might be more visible, whether socially, spiritually, emotionally, or even professionally. You might be more courageous, stepping into spaces you once hesitated to enter. You might disrupt old dynamics simply by no longer shrinking yourself to fit inside them. If you're still watching, I'd like to thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed the content and want to see more, please consider clicking the subscribe button. Your support is very appreciated. Feel free to share your experiences or thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, take care and subscribe for more insightful content.